It's 11:59 at Gun Owners Radio, and this is the Penn Patriot, music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I've got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, and another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind American lines, this is your song.
Nobody changes their tire with a gun. What they're for is killing human beings. And so it's really hard. I think as a community, we have to start having some shaming around gun possession. I think if you've got a gun, you should be ashamed of yourself. I really do. Now, I'm sorry, that's going to be the soundbite of the night, and the NRA is going to be mad at me. But I get that we got a Second Amendment. I get it. But, you also should be ashamed of yourself if you smoke. That's not against the law. I think if you own a gun, you should be ashamed of yourself, and you should really do some self-reflection. And I think that I just see so much more harm, just like cigarettes. I see so much more harm done than benefit.
Okay, so that's not just some guy on the internet. That's an elected official.
Yeah.
Who hurt him?
I commented on that video, but I said something along the lines of, imagine living a life of such privilege that there's no doubt in your mind that someone else is going to come and save you if you need saved. Like, this guy has never been scared. He has never thought, I might get killed right now. He has never thought, I might have to protect my family, my children from somebody coming into my home and raping my wife or killing my kids in front of me. Like, that has never crossed his mind. And how great for him.
No one's ever threatened his life or dignity. He's never had to worry about
Anything.
that level of harm. He just is able to sit there in judgment of others.
Mm-hmm.
Nice gig if you can get it.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, that was probably the biggest lesson I learned after we beat the sheriff up enough, the old sheriff up enough to start issuing permits.
Mm-hmm.
And I started teaching classes on how to navigate good cause back when we needed good cause.
Yeah.
I was humbled and shocked at how many of these seminars included, almost always a woman who would come up to me after, she'd kind of wait in line timidly. And usually it'd be like 2 or 3 guys come up and talk about what their favorite gun was or something like that. And I'm like, all right, whatever. And then she'd wait in line timidly until everybody else left. And then she'd tell me, I'm being stalked. I've been attacked. Mm-hmm. There's a coworker. There's an ex-boyfriend. Mm-hmm. There's somebody in her life. And she had no interest in guns before.
Yeah.
It wasn't a hobby. This wasn't something cool that she's been looking forward to. This was the difference between her ability to leave the house and have to basically be a complete and total shut-in.
Yeah.
And I remember it happened once, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then it just started happening almost every seminar. And I'm just going, oh, my God. I just had no idea. I'll be honest. I mean, I have a lot more in common with that guy, not my opinion, but my place in life. My life hasn't been threatened. My dignity hasn't been threatened. I've never had to worry about being raped. Mm-hmm. It's just never happened. But I have the wisdom and have paid attention to the feedback of others to understand that we're not here to fight for a hobby. We're here to fight for people's ability to function in life, to be able to defend their self. And I think it's huge. The whole premise of his crap is completely wrong, where he said, hey, you don't use a gun for gardening, you use a gun to kill people.
Yeah.
I don't use a gun to kill people.
Nope.
We don't use guns to kill people.
Absolutely not.
We use guns to defend our life.
To stop somebody else from killing us, or to stop somebody else from doing something so horrible that it's us or them. And also lots of other fun and harmless things like competing and target shooting and getting good at shooting and all the other sports and stuff that exist out there. It's an Olympic sport, for God's sake. Like, this is not something that anyone should be ashamed of. Now, unfortunately, because of people like this and thoughts like this, there are lots of people who are ashamed and who do feel like they have to hide it from their friends and their neighbors and their coworkers. And I think that's a shame. It's a shame that we of, all the rights, like you always say, right? Like, we have so many rights, but everyone would be up in arms, literally, if we said freedom of speech is something that you should be ashamed of and that your neighbors should ridicule you for. We'd be like, what the heck? An elected official says something like that? It would be insane to say that. But for some reason, the same concept isn't insane to say. There's lots of elected officials who have opinions like that.
And he's the guy when everybody, well, gee, Mike, why, no one wants to take your guns. No, we just want reasonable gun control. No, it's just not true. After doing this professionally for 10 years, I can honestly tell you that is just simply not true. It's not just a matter of education. They aren't reasonable people that just don't know. They're extremists who have extreme views, and they want to take your guns. This guy is not just, again, some guy on the internet. He was an elected official who doesn't just want reasonable gun control. He's someone in office. He's been voted into office, and his views reflect way too many other people's views as well when it comes to guns. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting clip. As they're saying these days, as it's popular to say these days, he said the quiet part loud. You're not supposed to say that out loud, guy. That's just supposed to be your view in your head. But no, he said it out loud. Okay, so Dakota, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. Alicia, how are you?
Fantastic.
Okay, so I want to point out before we get into the show here that, our San Diego County Gun Owners, our website is full of information. I get so many questions that we have that are covered on our website. I really want to take a minute to point out a lot of the resources we have at San Diego County Gun Owners website, and it's sdcgo.org, sdcgo.org. But in particular, I want you to go to the CCW section. If you're not sure how to apply or how to reapply for your CCW, that's one reason to go to sdcgo.org/CCW. If you're not sure where you can and can't carry, go to sdcgo.org/CCW. If you want to see articles on holsters and belts and gun and all kinds of really cool resources and information, go to sdcgo.org, but /CCW. In particular, though, we all worked with John Dillon, who's an attorney who specializes in Second Amendment, and we have a carry guide that's up now, and it's not completely comprehensive. In other words, we don't have every single scenario of where you can and can't carry, but it's pretty good. It's not bad at all.
And I like that the portion about how to renew your CCW, you do have it broken down by county because every issuing agency has some variations into the process. So you have San Diego County, Orange County, Riverside, and San Bernardino.
Yeah, the big Southern four. And they're all, it's gotten to the point where everybody's pretty easy at this point. But pull up the carry guide real quick. Excuse me. So with, there it is. So with SB2, where you can and can't carry has gotten even more complicated. So we tried to make it easy. It's fairly general. There are places where we get very specific. But if you're not sure, check it out here. Of course, we're not attorneys. It's not legal advice. But if you notice down at the bottom there, John Dillon of Dillon Law Group APC, and his phone number's right there. He has actually reviewed this, and then he agrees. So there you go. Wanted to point that out.
Yeah, make sure that you guys are going to the website direct every time you grab this, because as things change, as the laws shift, that's getting updated. So don't just save the PDF on your computer and reference it. It may change a little bit by the time you're wanting to look at it. So always go through the website.
When your rights are on the line and the fight gets real, you need a lawyer who knows the deal. From gun laws to courtrooms, he'll stand by you. John Dillon fights for the red, white, and blue. John Dillon defending your rights, keeping bare arms with truth and might. From GVROs to self-defense calls, Dillon Law Group, he fights for us all. When freedom's under fire, who you gonna call? Dillon Law Group, justice for all. DillonLawGP.com.
All right, on this segment, I want to know what you would do. I got a question for you guys, and I think you guys are the perfect two to answer this question. And Alicia, you actually have a class coming up, right?
I do.
Talk about that class real quick.
So we're going to be running a course. It's going to be next month. It's going to be at Cargo in El Cajon on March 19th, and it's all about making the best good first decision. Because the reality is, if we have time to think, if we have time to sit and ponder and think, well, what's happening right now and what are my options, we might make some good choices. But the idea is that in the moment, in real life, you need to make a good first decision. And so we talk about not only situational awareness, we talk about your options, and we give you some opportunities through role play to make some of those good first decisions. And then it's a great opportunity to really see how things can go.
And where does this curriculum come from?
It comes from Brian Hill with The Complete Combatant, and it is called the Image-Based Decisional Drills. However, we've kind of given it a slightly different title for our course. We're calling it the Split-Second Decision Drills for Personal Defense.
Nice. Okay.
I'll put our twist on it.
Okay, so here's my scenario, all right? Now give me just a minute before you jump in, all right?
Okay.
Let's say you're in a restaurant, and you're sitting at a table alone facing the door. And there are 15, 20 people in the restaurant, at various tables. There's a cash register, wait staff, just a normal, typical run-of-the-mill restaurant. A guy walks in through the front door, and you see him, and at his side, he's carrying a shotgun. He's making his way into the restaurant, past you, into the back of the restaurant. You're legally armed. You're carrying concealed. He's just holding his shotgun down at his side. Isn't particularly, he's not. He just focused on where he's going with his shotgun. What do you do? That's the scenario. Again, you're at a table, faced the door. You're carrying concealed legally. Restaurant full of people. Guy with a shotgun walks in. Who wants to go first?
I bet we're going to say the same thing or some variation of it.
We'll go for it.
Okay. It sounds to me like at this point in time, there is not a very, very clear case for getting involved with your firearm. Now, I think that you should be very ready to get involved with your firearm because that may become necessary very quickly. Or if you can leave the area, that is also a great way to go. It wasn't clear to me from the description if he has walked past and I could sneak out the door he just came in, or not, but that's obviously something that would be changing every second, right? So if I see an opportunity to leave, leaving is going to be my first go-to always. Yep. If I don't see an opportunity to leave, then I'm probably going to do a staged draw in which I have my cover garment cleared and my dominant hand fully seated on the gun. So I already have my grip on the gun, but the gun's not out of the holster. That's going to cut my draw time down by at least half a second for clearing that cover garment and getting a good grip on the gun. It's also going to guarantee that my grip is pretty solid on the way out of the holster if I do have to draw. So just kind of cutting out time. If I thought it was feasible to actually quietly draw and have a two-handed grip on the gun under the table, kind of keeping it pointed down towards the floor as this situation is unfolding, I would probably do that. But it's really going to depend on things like body language, intent. You can see intent in people, especially if you watch some videos of active shooters coming in, there's some tells that a lot of them have. So I think your spidey senses, your gut is going to be telling you what's going on. Now, is this a guy who just found a shotgun laying on the ground in the parking lot and he's like, I don't know what to do with this thing, and he's kind of carrying it awkwardly like, guys, help, I don't know what to do with this? Or is this a guy who looks like he is having a mental health break, or, you know, having some sort of intent to go towards someone particular, right? Like an ex or something. So I think you can read a lot about the situation just by being there and witnessing it. But if I can leave, I'm leaving.
So all right. So just to recap, option A is get out of there.
Yeah.
That's your option A. Option B is stage your draw. So in other words, go as far into your draw as you possibly can without actually drawing yet.
Yep.
And then option C is draw it, but don't necessarily point in or whatever, you know, that sort of thing. And basically the whole time you're assessing the situation.
Yeah, if this is like a booth, I'd probably just get under the booth. If it's a table, that might be a little bit more complicated depending on where the legs are and stuff. But yeah, I mean, ideally I'm getting my body out of like direct sight of this guy in case I do have to shoot at him or, you know, shoot him. And I'm trying to also get myself behind something that's like heavy enough to possibly slow down or stop the shotgun rounds if he points the gun at me.
And Alicia, what are your thoughts?
So I agree with Dakota. A would be obviously to get out, me, myself, and anybody else that I can help get out with me, absolutely first. But something to consider, one piece that I was kind of waiting to hear is we have these four things, and I call them four legs of a table. And this table's holding up your self-defense. First of all, does the person have the ability? Cause death, great bodily harm. Shotgun, absolutely, right?
Does the guy have the ability to harm? He's got a shotgun.
Right.
Okay,
And then the shotgun
leg number one
is a pretty easy box to mark.
Yes.
Boom, shotgun, yes.
Yeah.
Does he have the opportunity, right? In that scenario, there's obviously not going to be bulletproof glass. There's nothing between you and him. Absolutely, opportunity is there. The third piece is the one that was missing, and that's what I was waiting to kind of hear. Is there, you know, kind of anything more kind of coming from you as far as the scenario? Intent. Is there a manifested intent to do harm?
Right.
Like Dakota said, is this, you know, did he find something like, you know, like in the, whatever, you know, because you can have the ability and the opportunity, but there's not the manifested intent. So the intent element was missing, although if this, you know, if in a real scenario, you'd be able, you'd have a little bit more of your visual cues. You could see what was his demeanor, you know, kind of, how did his mindset appear to be? That could play a role. And lastly is going to be the imminent fear of death or great bodily harm, and you know, being in that vicinity with the intent there would go to that imminent threat. So,
and you can't really have four without three, can you?
No.
You need three to have
correct.
four.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's kind of
It's almost like they kind of build on each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and these can all come, like, they can be like this, right? Like, you could
Absolutely.
have a situation that has two for a long time. There could be the opportunity and there could be the ability, right? So those two could already exist. You know that the guy's here, he's got the shotgun. That's happening. That intent piece and going from intent to like, I need to shoot this guy now because my life or someone else's life is in jeopardy, that can happen like instantaneously. And that's as simple as, you know, him starting to lift that shotgun and shoulder it, or, you know, him starting to yell, I'm going to kill you, or something like that, right? Like there's a moment in time where you're like, that's the go signal. It's one of the things that I have a little bit of beef about in the training community is we're so used to these auditory cues when we shoot. Almost every class you ever take, right? There's a beep or some instructor yelling, fire, shoot, or whatever. That's not how real life works. If you need the beep is going to be what you're seeing with your eyes. You're going to be seeing a situation unfold. And as it's unfolding, you're going to be like, that was my go signal. I need to draw my gun and get in this fight. That is totally different than 99% of the training out there. So
and by the way, it's exactly right. You're skipping ahead. That's the next
I'm
chapter. You're absolutely right. Now, both of you gave excellent answers. And that's because you both cheated and you both went to training and learned all this stuff, which is completely and totally cheating, in my opinion. But
If you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Yeah.
exactly. But I've made the case in the past that, especially in the CCW classes that I was teaching, is, you know, when we say get more training, people automatically think I need to go
Range time.
make more accurate holes in paper. And the reality is, especially if you're a CCW holder, if you're going through the CCW process, or you're relatively new, or you just haven't had much training with your CCW, these are the types of classes that I think are extremely important. I think that most people are fairly proficient, and probably more proficient than they think they are. I'm not even going to say that. That'll cause too much argument. Here's what I'm going to rephrase. Okay, I'm going to rephrase this. I think that most people spend too much of their training time, too high a percentage of their training, on putting accurate holes in paper. And I think that we could all carve out more time into putting training, or putting more time into training,
Mindset.
like mindset, the legalities and ethics of carrying, and then this kind of decision making. I mean, I got to tell you, since I was a kid, I've had little daydreams on how I'm going to save the world. Some guy walks in, and I think a lot of people, again, you guys cheated. You went to a class and got training. Mm-hmm. If you hadn't gone to this class, I think a lot of people, if you tell them like, "Hey, a guy with a shotgun walks in, you're carrying concealed,"
They're going to drawn shoot.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm going to take care of that guy.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, and by the way, I think their motivation is extremely noble.
Yeah.
Because they're thinking to themselves, "Hey, you said there's 15 people in this place. I want to help those people.
Yep.
I could probably escape, but I want to help these people." Yep. I think it's honorable, but I think that taking the time to take a class, take this kind of training, and really think these kind of scenarios through, and then both of you had really, really good examples of why you made the decision that you made. So having that, I don't think you can't role play every single scenario that ever exists. Right. What you can do is you can have building blocks, and you can have a roadmap to how you make those decisions.
So. Absolutely. One thing I want to throw out there is you made a statement that people put too much time into marksmanship. I don't think they put too much time. I think they don't put enough. They don't put enough.
This is why I rephrased it, because I knew people. I get it.
I don't think they see the importance of the other aspects of training. So, I think we need to put more holes in paper, and then also see the importance of the other side of the mindset as well.
Yeah, I think a piece of this is that, like, no matter how much you shoot, no matter how accurate you get, like, there's always 1% more. You could always be 1% better. No matter how many decisions you've made, you can always get 1% better at making decisions. But look at your own skill, on a fair plane, right? Like, look at how are my groups at 3 yards, 12, 15 yards, 45 feet, right? Like, we're thinking about, like, what's the range that we could possibly have to shoot somebody? Let's see how good are we at all of those distances. But if you're like, hey, I'm doing pretty good, I'm finishing top 10 in my USPSA matches, or I'm really putting in a lot of time at the range, well, maybe it is time for you to think about what are some, like, verbal de-escalation skills that I might be lacking. How can I, avoid that fight where I do have to go to my gun? What are some, maybe like situational awareness type classes that I could take, and understanding pre-assault indicators, and what does a bad guy look like right before he throws a punch? Like, what are the things that I could notice in my environment that would help me be a better witness if I have to call 911 about something? What are some tells that I could be paying attention to that I could maybe get help started before the situation has even gone bad? And so those things are things that we, a lot of times as shooters, we're like, that's not the fun stuff, though. The fun stuff is making the gun go bang. And I get that. I fall into that all the time, too. But think about what other skills might I be lacking? And is there room for me to improve, in other areas, too?
Yeah, I think
there's always room.
There is. And I think that the way I break it down is the 4 categories are marksmanship, which is what everybody focuses on a lot. They're the basics of equipment, which is, what gun, what holster, what belt, that sort of thing. There's the legalities and ethics, which is, hey, where can I carry where can I carry, how can I carry that, that sort of thing. And then there's how I act in a gunfight, which has to do with movement and decision-making, that sort of thing. Yep. Those are the 4 categories I came up with. And I think that a lot of us spend a lot of time, a large percentage of training time on number 1, marksmanship. And there are 3 other categories that, get ignored. And the decision-making one You know, we've interviewed Brian before, and I think he's an amazing guy, and this is an amazing
Absolutely.
curriculum, and I'm glad you're teaching it. So,
It's going to be a fantastic day.
yeah, so go to gunownersradio.com,
March 19th.
and there you go, $75, March 19th,
That's it.
2026, 5:30 to 9:30 p.m. It's going to be at Cargo out in El Cajon.
Yep.
And
Great people at Cargo.
Yeah, and our very own Alicia will be teaching it, so check it out. So anyway, what did you think of that scenario? Was that good?
It was a good
was
scenario.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
That's it.
Those are fun.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right.
Since 2019, more than 1,400 women have applied to be a part of Not Me CA. What began as a small program has grown into a movement that is empowering women across our community. Since 2021, we've hosted educational shooting socials every month, where about a dozen women at a time come together to learn and to build confidence. We've also granted over a dozen firearms to women who could not afford one, ensuring that cost is never a barrier to safety. Our work has been recognized at the highest level in San Diego County. And in 2023, the County Board of Supervisors honored Not Me SD with a proclamation. And in 2024, the City of Escondido did the same. But the real reward comes from the lives that we've impacted. We offer a series of classes from Stop the Bleed to pepper spray and situational awareness and women's self-defense, alongside with firearms training and CCW support. Survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault know they have a safe place to turn, and every participant is paired with a mentor to guide them and support them every step of the way. At Not Me CA, our mission is clear: to give women the courage, knowledge, and power. Created by women for women, we are here to ensure that every woman has the tools, training, and confidence that she needs to protect herself and to live without fear. But we cannot do this work alone. We need your help. Your donations directly provide training, mentorship, and even firearms to women who otherwise would have no way to protect themselves. Every dollar you give equips another woman with safety and with hope. Please join us. Invest into courage, invest into empowerment, and invest into women's safety. Together, we can change lives.
So you were back in town. You had a little bit of travel last week, right?
I was traveling last week. Yeah, I was in Georgia and Florida.
And what did you do in Georgia?
I went down to Smyrna, Georgia, where Glock is at, and I did their Glock professional armory class and operator class.
I think that's awesome. So I'm totally unfamiliar with their facility in Smyrna,
Smyrna.
right outside
Yeah.
of Atlanta.
It was kind of funny. The building where Glock Professional is like this unmarked building. It doesn't say Glock on it anywhere. So you just like park and then you go through this like double door and there's bulletproof glass and you're kind of like, where am I? You know, and then you go in and there's a range inside and a classroom and everything. But yeah, it was super fun. It was it was 3 days of training and then kind of a travel day on either side.
And what was the inspiration? What were you looking to accomplish?
Well, A Girl and a Gun hosts what they call a Glock getaway. And so that's like once or twice a year, and it's this program. And so I knew that it was a great opportunity for me to have some other girls from the San Diego chapter go. So I had one of my prior instructors who doesn't live in San Diego anymore, one of my current instructors who lives here, and then one of our chapter girls as well. So there were 4 of us representing the San Diego chapter, and then there were ladies from all other chapters. But from the San Diego chapter side, kind of my hope for having some of the other girls attend was that we could do better gun cleaning classes. We host gun
idea.
cleaning once, twice a year, and it's always a huge hit. The girls love it. It's super fun. We teach them how to field strip their guns, give them time to clean them. We walk around and help, disassemble and everything. And then we help them get it all back together. But we do have so many girls who just have Glocks. And so I was like, well, if we go and get our armory cert, we can actually do some tests and see, like, does their recoil spring need to be replaced? This and that. And then we could order parts and we could help them actually change out and do their own gunsmithing. So we're thinking about doing like a Glock, a Glock standalone gun cleaning / fix it if it needs to be fixed kind of thing. And so, yeah, I thought it'd be helpful to have some other.
So you're now a certified Glock armor?
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
And how long did that course take?
That was an 8-hour or maybe 9-hour day. That was like a 1 day.
1 day, cool. And talk about how they, like, how does it go? If you're taking a 1 day armor course from Glock, how does that progress?
Yeah, so they start out like I guess recently, Glock kind of split their curriculum into 2 separate pieces. So it used to be, I think, like Glock Gen 5 and before, but now with the V and the 6, it's Gen 5, Gen V, and Gen 6 is one class, which is the class I took. And then there's like Gen 4s and prior, which is a separate class. And so the day starts with them kind of teaching you how to just do a typical field strip, which, pretty much everybody in class, if you're there, you know how to field strip a Glock, right? But then they go into,
is it the way we all do it? Or
Yeah.
do they have some kind of new fangled?
No, they didn't
Okay.
have anything like crazy or different. There were a couple of little tricks that I learned that just make things a little bit easier. But yeah, no, that it was, typical, I think what everybody does: triple check the gun's empty, close the slide, press the trigger, push the 2 little things down as you gently start to rack it, but don't rack it too far because then it'll reset the trigger. It's like the typical thing. But then they had us spend probably about 3 hours on just the slide portion of the gun, taking out all of the pieces and putting them all back in. We had to do that a bunch of times. And then we had some little quizzes about what's the difference between the Gen 5 and the Gen 6, whatever, like firing pin assembly or whatever.
I'm surprised. So it's significantly, because your Glocks are what, 4, 3s?
Well, I have Gen
You have a
3s and I
variety.
have a Gen 5 as
Okay.
well. Yeah.
I'm surprised. And you said that the 5, the V, and the 6 is one class. I'm surprised. They're significantly that much different, huh?
Well, I guess that it makes sense because most folks who are working on guns in the country right now would be working on 5s or 6s.
Yeah.
California is really the only state that's still stuck back with
Right.
Gen 3s and has a lot of Gen 3s, around to work on. There are some pretty significant differences on the internals between the Gen 3 and the Gen 6 especially. But yeah, there are some pretty significant differences, and even just how you take it apart is different. In the Gen 3, there's 3 pins that you have to remove in order to get everything out of the frame. On the Gen 5 and the V and the 6, there's only 2 pins. And the Gen 3 is a little more picky. You've got to do the pins in a certain order. You've got to put them in a certain order. The Gen 5, you can kind of do it in any order.
Wow.
So there are some differences. I think if the class was 12 hours, they probably could have covered it all. But with just 1 day dedicated to the armory class, it made sense why they separated it.
Any insight as to what their plans are with the V and the 6 and...
So it sounds to me, they didn't talk about it a whole lot, but it sounds to me like what we've been saying, which is that the V is kind of the new base, the new base of all of their future guns. And that the 6 is really the one, obviously, that's going to be the most popular. I don't think there's going to be a ton of Vs being sold. But the V is kind of that base model. And it definitely, they cleaned up their line of products. There's way less different numbered Glocks available now with the new Gen 6, which I think was part of the plan. So
the idea is they have this base model V, and a 6 is just a V with some bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And then, so everything's a V. They make, they got rid of some of the models. So
Yes.
then they're
Yeah.
never coming back. Like all the, like the Gap models, the Glock automatic pistol.
Yeah, they didn't
calibers,
really
those are
talk.
gone forever.
They didn't really talk about any of that, but yes, I do believe those are gone forever.
But the ones that are like, for example, they have a 19 and a 17 in 6.
Yep.
And what they're going to do is they're going to, for example, maybe take a 30, a V30, and then add the bells and whistles, and it will become a 30 Gen 6.
Yeah, they didn't really talk about like future plans for the product line, so I don't want to agree as if Glock told me that. They didn't say anything like that, but it did sound to me like they're planning on, adding more models to the Gen 6 lineup. So I'm
Gotcha.
sure it's going to be something like that. Yeah.
So what else did you learn? Was there anything that you were surprised by? Like, hey, I had no idea.
The performance trigger was nice. That's something that's a Gen 5 thing. So most Californians probably, haven't used one or don't own one. But the Gen 5 performance trigger was really nice. And I've seen them before. I actually worked with one before, and it's really tricky to reassemble it because of the way the spring is. And you've got to kind of like shove something in there. And they had a tool that did it for you. And I was like, this is so much easier than my, hour of trying to get that spring compressed and in there just right. So there were some neat little tricks like that. But unfortunately, not stuff that's going to be super relevant for me in California because most of our, folks aren't going to have Gen 5s or 6s. But I think it gave me enough of an understanding of like how the internal safeties work and what to look for when you're troubleshooting problems that I could use that same, kind of information and skill set on Gen 3s just fine.
So who should go take this class?
Well, I guess it depends what you're trying to do. If you just want to learn how to, clean your gun better or how to do like a more thorough, instead of just a field strip, you want to do a thorough takedown, take everything out of the gun, check your springs and stuff. A lot of that info is out there already, right? It's on YouTube. You can find it. Even like Glock's official channel has a bunch of videos up, right? So it depends what you want to do. I wanted the certificate mostly because I do this in a professional capacity. And I thought that the certificate was a nice way to, kind of not, it's not like I'm fighting for people's respect or anything, but there is a level of respect that comes with having the actual credential from the issuing agency. So I could say all day, like, yeah, I know how to take my Glocks apart. I do it all the time. I clean it. But there's something nice to be able to say, I'm a Glock certified armorer. Let me help you with your gun, right? So I just kind of got it for that purpose. But if you're just a person who likes your gun and wants to learn how to clean it better, you don't have to go to Georgia and take the class. If you want to help other people, I think it could be a nice thing to have.
Cool. Do you have any advice for someone that's never going to take that class, but they have a Glock and they want to clean it more effectively? Do you have any advice?
Yeah, find a Glock certified armorer near you. No, like there's lots of YouTube videos and stuff. I think like anything, mess with your gun at your own risk, right? Like don't be putting non-OEM parts in your Glock. Without saying too much, recently somebody that I know had purchased a kit that was, all the internals for a slide, but it wasn't Glock branded and it catastrophically failed. And so, if you have stuff in your gun that's not official Glock, from the manufacturer, the tolerances might be different. It could mess up your gun. It could break your gun. It could make something unsafe happen. It could get rid of one of the internal safeties. Like there's all sorts of things that can go wrong. So one thing I really learned is how tight the tolerances are, how important it is to make sure the stuff is perfectly to spec, and why trust somebody who has no skin in the game, right? Like these companies who are selling these slide part kits, they don't care if your gun breaks. You voided your warranty by putting in non-Glock parts anyway. So not only did their parts potentially break your gun, but then you can't even warranty it with Glock because you voided your warranty. So stick with Glock parts, keep your warranty intact, and, make sure that you're using high quality, springs and everything like that. Don't be messing with stuff that could impact safety.
Did they talk about a preferred solvent or preferred lubricant? Or
No.
did they have a recommendation at all?
Glock is kind of well known to be this gun that you can kind of run dirty. Maybe it likes being lubed, but it doesn't necessarily need to be cleaned perfectly all the time. And so I think in class somebody did ask something about cleaning, and the guy who was running the class was kind of like, it's a Glock, it doesn't need to be cleaned. So I think the instructors on the range days, they did have some lube out. I think they were using butter. I can't remember the name of the brand.
Butter.
Well, no. It was like
butter?
gun butter,
a gun
maybe.
butter.
Yeah, it might have been called gun butter, but it was this really nice.
Not margarine, but butter.
Yeah,
All right.
I think it's a brand, gun butter.
Gotcha.
But they had those out, and then the needle tip. Like Slip 2000 or whatever, they had some of those out as well. So I don't think there's nothing super picky about it. the range days were really interesting because we actually got to see, after we got our armory certs, we got to see in real life people having problems with their guns, whether it be that they, last time they cleaned it, they assembled it wrong. We had a girl that had her gun put together incorrectly, and so as she's shooting, something's not quite working right, and she's like, I don't know what's happening. And so the instructors were able to like show us like, oh, this is what happens when you put this piece in before that piece. And so that was pretty interesting. And the range days were a lot of fun. We shot probably about 1,000 rounds, maybe 1,100 rounds in 2 days. And yeah, it was great.
That's awesome. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you got to go. That's very
Thanks.
cool.
I think it'd be important to throw out there because you mentioned whom else might be interested and why might they be. Throw out there just so people are aware, to be eligible to take the course, you have to fit into a particular category. Now, can you get creative and get into a category? Yes, you can if you want it, but no up front. You got to be in one of these categories. You must be active or retired law enforcement, military, private security, Glock stocking range or dealer, or a member of GSSF, which if you are not aware of that, that is an easy way you can choose to become eligible should you choose to. That's going to be the Glock Sport Shooting Foundation.
Very
member.
Easy to become a member. You
Yes.
literally just pay them money. That's like
So, FYI,
very easy.
If you want to take that, if you want to become a Glock armor, get into one of those categories.
Yeah. And the A Girl and a Gun Glock Getaway doesn't require you to be in any of those categories. That's like a special event that they have just for A Girl and a Gun. So you can also join our next Girls Getaway at agirlandagun.org.
So when you're using it on your firearms, because it takes about 3 cleanings. So I like to say it's a clean shoot, clean shoot, clean shoot process, much like seasoning a cast iron skillet. So you're going to field strip your firearm, break it down, and then you're going to put our product on piece by piece by piece, covering the entire firearm. Then you're going to take the barrel, you're going to clean the barrel inside of that, and then you come back and you wipe it all off, and you're done. It's that easy. Remember, seal one and done.
So it looks to me, if you look across the country and see what's going on, the anti-gun folks are having a bit of a quiet surge. There are a lot of states that are experiencing extremely restrictive bills being introduced in their state legislature, and it really isn't getting talked about enough. There's been a number of states that are copying the California model when it comes to gun restrictions, and it's just not getting the outrage that it deserves. I think part of that is because there is so much going on in the world right now. Mm-hmm. But it's anti-gunners are having a day. They're having a moment, and it's frankly kind of scary. I wanted to go, if we could, let's go through the best example of that right now is Virginia. Virginia has an onslaught of bills.
Yes.
And a lot of other states are copying their lead. Everybody's copying, of course, California. And as we go through these, you're going to hear a lot of very familiar anti-gun crap because it's basically Virginia is getting Californianized. So February 17th was the legislative crossover deadline. Any bill that has not left its chamber of origin by the end of the day is considered dead for the session. Unfortunately, many bills have met that deadline. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the following bills have passed the Senate and are awaiting action in the House of Delegates. Why don't we go through one by one?
So we've got SB 272, which limits who can carry firearms at public institutions of higher learning.
That's interesting. So they're trying to outlaw carry on college campuses.
Mm-hmm. We have SB 643, establishes a permit to purchase scheme in Virginia.
Which is very similar to what we're experiencing here in California.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. SB 496 adds new restrictions on law-abiding citizens to keep a firearm in their vehicle for self-defense.
Interesting. SB 727 prohibits carrying assault firearms in public places, including streets, sidewalks, and parks, but it really criminalizes carrying any centerfire semi-automatic firearm anywhere. That term assault firearm.
Assault firearm. Well, they're passing an assault weapon. Well, we'll see here. We'll see.
That's so interesting to me. Mm-hmm. All right, SB 749 bans certain semi-automatic firearms, including many semi-automatic rifles, pistols, and shotguns, and arbitrarily limits magazine capacities.
SB 763 levies an 11% excise tax on the sale of all firearms and ammunition and designates all funding from the tax to go into a so-called Virginia Gun Violence Intervention and Prevention Fund. Doesn't that
Which
sound familiar?
It sounds exactly like what we're dealing with out here.
Correct.
It's
So
almost
interesting.
like California laws got copy pasted.
Right.
Truly copy pasted. And you know why they pick 11%? Because there's a federal tax that's 11%. So they're basically daring you to say, hey, if this is no one's complained about the 11% at the federal level, so how can you complain about the 11% at the state level?
Interesting.
It's a anti-gun game of chicken. Okay, so the following bills have passed the House of Delegates, which is like their that's like their assembly, and are awaiting action in the Senate. Go for it.
HB 21 creates sweeping new standards of responsible conduct for members of the firearm industry. The bill requires these businesses to establish and implement vague and subjective reasonable controls over the manufacture, sale, distribution, use, and marketing of firearm-related products. Additionally, it establishes a broad civil cause of action allowing the Attorney General, local government attorneys, or private individuals to sue firearm businesses for injunctions, damages, and costs.
Again, sounds very similar. Yeah. All right. We also have HB 40. Ends the centuries-old practice of individuals building lawful firearms for personal use. The transfer and possession of an unserialized or plastic firearm would be prohibited. Criminalizes those who lawfully purchased unfinished frames and receivers before the bill's effective date.
This, of course, is
Before the bill's effective date.
against ghost guns, against home manufactured firearms, which we have currently are in the middle of a lawsuit here in California.
It also sounds like that one is a possession ban, right? You can't even possess it if you got it before,
Correct.
which it's always crazy to me when the government's like, not only is this thing illegal, but you have to get rid of it or you're a criminal. I'm like, are you going to pay me money for it? Like, well, I purchased this with my money, and now you're going to tell me I can't
And it
have
was
it.
lawful at the time of purchase.
Yeah, it was lawful at the time of purchase. Crazy. Okay, HB 93 requires subjects of protective orders to transfer their firearms to individuals over the age of 21 who do not reside in the same home as the prohibited person.
Oh, interesting.
HB 110 expands restrictions on the ability for a law-abiding individual to keep a firearm in their vehicle for self-defense.
That's interesting because there was just one that said puts restrictions on the ability earlier. So they're opposing bills here. HB 217 bans certain semi-automatic firearms, including many semi-automatic rifles, pistols, and shotguns, arbitrarily limits magazine capacities, and prohibits possessions by legal adults under the age of 21.
So a lot of times, two houses have almost identical bills, and then they end up
Choosing the one they like more.
choosing the one they like more, or basically choosing the characteristics of each that they like best,
Okay.
and then creating one bill.
Well, these are opposites. One said expands restrictions. Oh, never mind. Never mind. Expands restrictions on the ability. I misread that one.
And the one they passed prohibits
Yes.
altogether.
Yeah. So this one's just restricting it more. The other one was like
A complete
no go. Yeah.
And what they'll end up doing is doing, making some sausage and figuring out, all right, which ones can we handle here?
We also have HB 871 creates a mandatory storage requirement for homes where minors are prohibited persons are
Our president,
mandatory storage requirements for homes where minors or prohibited persons are present.
which has existed here in California for forever.
Right.
HB 901 expands the current red flag law to add many more persons who can file emergency risk protective order petitions to a court to suspend a person's Second Amendment rights and to order the seizures of the person's guns without any concerns for civil liberties.
HB 916 expands the curriculum requirements for Virginia concealed carry permit classes.
HB 1071 requires threat assessment teams for public schools to receive additional training on the use of red flag emergency substantial risk orders.
HB 1524 prohibits carrying assault firearms again, defined as any semi-automatic centerfire firearm in a public place, including streets, sidewalks, and parks.
Wow. HB 1525 prohibits the purchase and possession of firearms by legal adults under the age of 21, including anyone who already legally possesses a firearm.
So that's what's happening in Virginia. I mean, that is as thorough an anti-gun effort as I think I have ever seen anywhere ever. It took California a couple decades to get to the point of where Virginia wants to get this year.
They just took our blueprint.
They took our
Copy-paste.
blueprint and said, here, just take everything that California has implemented over the last 15, 20, 30 years, and let's just do it all in 1 year. In 1 year.
Does Virginia have like a San Diego County Gun Owners or a Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus or something like
Yeah,
that?
they do. They actually have a really very active, well, not only do they have a really very active state affiliate, which the name escapes me right now, I apologize, but they also have the headquarters of the NRA
Right.
is in Virginia. So, yes,
Well,
they do.
I'm just saying maybe we can throw it up or something. Let's encourage folks
people
to
to
send
get
some money
involved.
their way. You
Yes, and that's exactly where we're going. So that's Virginia. That's the most comprehensive list of anti-gun stuff that's happening. There are still some other states out there like Minnesota.
Yeah.
Minnesota wants to ban magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. That's HF 3402. Meanwhile, okay, so that's Virginia and Minnesota, and we have some really horrible bills, some of which have been defeated, some are still pending, but like New Mexico tried to pass some things, Oregon, the state of Oregon, the state of Washington, Massachusetts, a lot of the usual suspects. There's really only about 7 or 8 states out there that are doing bad things.
Well, in Minnesota, just the other day, they shut down a bill that was one of the craziest bills I've ever read about. It was basically saying that if you keep your firearms that are now going to be banned in this like assault weapons category or whatnot, if you keep those, you have to go through this licensing process. And you also allow warrant-free searches of your home to ensure that you're storing it per the requirements that you agreed to when you get your license for your assault weapon. Warrant-free home searches coming from the same state that has had all of this federal government drama and people thinking that there's a lot of overreach happening and yada, yada. That same party that was saying that the federal government is overreaching is now saying, and let's let your local law enforcement check out your house whenever they want. What? I thought that was crazy, but it didn't pass.
By the way, I'm almost certain. So back in 2000, they opened up a registration for, quote unquote, assault weapons for semi-automatic.
Right. Yep.
If you, I don't know how many people actually chose to register their firearm as an assault weapon. I'm pretty sure, if memory serves, in California, if you registered your gun as an assault weapon, if you have a registered assault weapon in California, you agreed to the same thing.
It's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
It's insane.
That's why a lot of people. I remember what it was like. There were a lot of people walking around going, maybe I will register it as an assault weapon. That'll be cool, and I'll have an assault weapon, and no one will have an assault weapon. Like, the consequences weren't really clear, and I don't think people were still looking at it as a reasonable option, and they were thinking, well, all right, maybe this is, a reasonable effort to, whatever. But a lot of people saw that and decided that was completely and totally unreasonable.
Yeah.
We're not even going to entertain that idea.
Crazy.
Now, that's the bad news. Meanwhile, I just want to compare it to some of the other states. Alabama has HB 360, the Second Amendment sales tax holiday.
Creates an annual tax holiday on firearms, ammunition, and firearms accessories, exempting them from state sales and use tax during a specified weekend each year. The goal is to reduce the cost burden on firearms owners and related purchasers. The proposal passed the Alabama House and moves to the Senate for further consideration.
So, well, some folks are looking to, in some states are looking to limit people's rights. You have a state like Alabama that is looking to help expand things, which, by the way, Alabama also boasts the highest percentage of adults who carry concealed.
Interesting.
I know. It was something like 20% or 22%.
Oh, I would have thought much higher than that.
Yeah. And then, all right, let's take a look at Kansas. Alicia, you want to read Kansas?
So we have, out of Kansas, we have HCR 5006. It is the constitutional amendment on right to bear arms. And they are proposing amending the Kansas Constitution to recognize the right to bear arms, including ammunition, accessories, and components, as a fundamental right subject to strict scrutiny for any restrictions. If approved by the legislature, it would then go to voters as a constitutional amendment. This would raise the legal standard for reviewing future gun regulations in Kansas.
That's a warm fuzzy.
That is.
So what is the difference? What's the difference between these two states? Why am I bringing this up? Well, number one, I want to make the point that the laws that we fight here in California will prevent horrible laws in states that aren't California. If you go back 10, 15, 20 years and you look at Virginia, you look at the rural parts of Virginia, you look at the history of Virginia when it comes to firearms, whether it's hunting or self-defense, 15, 20 years ago, had someone suggested that they were going to pass this, slate of laws, you would have been laughed out of the state.
Yeah.
And I understand people can explain to me, oh, Mike, it's, they're right by Washington, D.C., and it's really just Northern Virginia, blah, 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 blah. I get that. I totally understand that. But the reality is the laws that were tested and passed in California made their way to Virginia, and the very minute they had the ability to have a legislature that would agree with what they're trying to do, boom, they passed an entire slate of extremely unreasonable laws. So, number one, it's important to fight these things right here, right now. They're going to follow you. They're not going to go away. They have to be fought and defeated. Number two, there are good things happening in other states. We just looked at Missouri and we just looked at Alabama. So what is the difference between the bad states, Oregon, Washington, now Virginia, Illinois, Massachusetts, some of the others, and the good states, Missouri, Alabama, Arizona's kind of turned into this battleground state. What's the difference between these states? The difference is people. That's the difference. People in the states that are having good laws like firearms tax holidays are fighting for those measures. They're doing something about it. They're saying, hey, let's make good things happen. In the bad states, you have people that are saying, hey, this is our opportunity. We elected people to serve, and now we're going to clean up. Now we're going to say, hey, we're an anti-gun group. Mr. Representative in Virginia, Mrs. Representative in Virginia, we helped you get into office. Now it's time for you to come through with us and for us. And man, are they coming through for the anti-gun crowd. By the way, you're asking Dakota, it's the Virginia Citizens Defense League, the VCDL, and their website is vcdl.org. vcdl.org, Virginia Citizens Defense League. And my understanding is they do a fantastic job. They're very organized and they do a really great job.
Yeah, so even if you don't live in Virginia, I just jumped onto their website. You can use their website to do all sorts of stuff. They need help in a lot of ways, but even if you don't live there, you can join, you can donate money, you can help them fight these fights. Obviously, there's lots of fights here in California we're fighting as well, and, definitely give your money to SDCGO and the CRPA and all the other great orgs that are doing stuff here in California too, but we've talked about this on the show before. Just because you live in a state that doesn't have these laws happening or doesn't have their politicians fighting for these, anti-gun laws, you can still be a big part of the solution, right? We have to fight against these laws in every state. Any state that is trying to pass things like this, we all need to come together as gun owners, no matter what state we're in. Even if we're in a good gun-friendly state like Alabama, we want our Alabama friends to get involved in the fights in Virginia and get involved in the fights in California.
Yeah, there's three main ways. One, you get the right people elected or prevent the wrong people from getting elected. Two, lawsuits. Lawsuits are extremely effective, but the reality is if you're not the attorney and if you're not the plaintiff, then there really is nothing for you to do with a lawsuit except maybe write a check. So we can't rely on lawsuits. The other harsh reality is there are a lot of really bad gun laws that would not be considered unconstitutional. So we're not going to be able to solve every problem with a lawsuit. Do I think they're unconstitutional? Yeah. Will the courts find them that way? No. And then the third thing is We got to change the culture. And I think that people that's probably the one they're most comfortable with, even though we could definitely stand to be more effective. So if you tell people like, hey, take somebody to the range, yeah, they're super comfortable with that. We probably don't do it at the scale that needs to be. But I think there are a lot of things you can do to change the culture. One is don't hide in the shadows. Be proud of the fact that you're a gun owner. Introduce your sport, your hobby, your passion to other people, but do that in a way that is, loud and proud. I can't tell you how many people, well, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to end up on a list. I don't want to be judged. We're way past that. And a lot of the organizations, I know San Diego County Gun Owners, we have a lot of ways for you to get involved, whether it's working at tabletop and passing out information to people, or it's coming to our shooting social and teaching new people how to shoot. Dakota, you're involved with a Girl and a Gun. You guys do all kinds of things to change the culture.
Yep.
Talk about that for a second.
Put me on the spot.
There you go.
Yeah, I actually just got a message from a person like 5 minutes ago. I was reading it right now while you were talking. But she was just saying, thanks so much for running a Girl and a Gun. Basically, she said she's learned more in the last couple of months than she has in the last 2 years practicing on her own and with her family. And, really what we try to do is not just bring people in, right? We had a class last night where there were 6 girls who had never shot a gun in their life. And the only reason that they were here is because they heard there was this, intro gun class for women run by women, right? And so they felt comfortable to come and try it out. But we also want to support organizations like Women for Gun Rights and help our members who are involved politically or who are really into firearm culture, getting them more involved in activism and getting them more involved in actually helping these laws change. And so we're nonpartisan in the sense that we don't care who you vote for or what your political opinions are in any other way, but we are pro 2A. So anything that comes up that's specifically Second Amendment politics, we're going to be involved in trying to get other folks to get involved as well.
And Alicia, you teach classes that are from beginner to intermediate and not just basic firearms class, but we talked about decision-making class that's coming up.
Correct.
Talk about some of the things that you do.
So, as you know, I work here at Discount Gun Mart. Girl My Gun is the great shooting social club, fantastic club, but not everybody knows about it. But a lot of people know about the range. So I come across a different cross-section of people that are not aware of the shooting clubs being available. So I get a lot of women that get referred to me because they showed up wanting to buy their first gun, and the salesperson saw that maybe, highly recommended, let's get you some training as well. So they kind of come to me by way of an interest in purchasing of a firearm often. And so a lot of them really don't know what they're getting into, and they're not quite sure of how to proceed. And what's fantastic is get some training. And I highly recommend that you get some training before you buy your first gun, because you don't know what you want until you've spent some time with some stuff. So I work with a lot of women, letting them explore a variety of different guns, letting them try them, because far too many women come in either being told that the little lady needs a revolver, or they come in with maybe no recommendation from someone, but when they look at the case, the big guns look scary. They think they want a cute little tiny gun because they look less intimidating, but what they don't realize is the science of shooting says you go light, you go small. It's going to get snappy. It's not necessarily as easy to control. So there's a lot of information that they don't have. And so I work with a lot of women teaching them all about the firearms, not only how to use them safely and properly, but exposing them to all of their options so that they make an informed decision when they do buy. So
There you go.
I spend a lot of time doing that.
Okay, so all this to say, you have to be awake by now. If you didn't hear all the things that are happening in Virginia right now, that have already happened in other states, that have happened here in your home state, you have to be awake by now. You have to understand that being a gun owner is not a spectator sport. So we need you to get involved. Check out sdcgo.org, join, become a member, sign up to volunteer, work a tabletop, work a shooting social, make a donation, but you have to get involved. And it's not that hard. It's a whole lot of fun, and it's extremely effective. So sdcgo.org, get involved, join today. Appreciate everything that you do and will do in the future. So just do a little bit more than you did last year, this year. Make 2026 the year you get involved, the year you volunteer. So the lifeblood of every organization is membership. We absolutely need membership. And you as a Second Amendment activist want to be involved, want to help make things better. And we have a way for you to be involved, get involved, and stay involved. Look at our volunteer page. If you go to sdcgo.org/volunteer, we keep it up to date, and there's always an opportunity for you to get more involved. Our bread and butter are our shooting socials, where we teach people how to shoot. They've never had a shooting experience. Maybe they're brand new to shooting and they want to have a first-time shooting experience. You can help us do that. Or if you want to help spread the word, we have tabletops at different gun shops, at different events, and you can volunteer to tell people more about the Second Amendment, more about how to get a CCW, or more about being a member of an organization like SDCGO. The good news is it's super easy. We'll help train you, we'll help you get involved, we'll give you the opportunity to do good things.
If you don't have the time to volunteer, there's another way that you can help too. We are always looking for folks to donate. And if you want to pledge $5,000 in this next year, we will have you on our show as a guest host. So come join us in the studio. We would love to have you here for one episode, and that is for a price of $5,000.
$5,000 donation to San Diego County Gun Owners gets you a guest host with me and Dakota and Alicia. Talk about whatever you want to talk about, and you get to do whatever you want right here on Gun Owners Radio. So thank you so much. Whatever you do, just do a little bit more than you did last year and help us defend and preserve the Second Amendment right here in your backyard. So a few weeks ago in Minnesota, there started a lot of conversations when it comes to guns. One of them was, can you carry at a protest? There was a lot of pushback, and I was glad to see it when certain members of the Trump administration came out and said, hey, you shouldn't carry at a protest. They're completely wrong. And we pushed back, and a lot of the other organizations pushed back, and I was really, really proud of gun advocates for pushing back. I wanted to talk about something at the time, but I decided to wait a few weeks because I was afraid that people wouldn't listen. They wouldn't hear what we were talking about. And what that is in California, there is a law that has to do with people carrying and protests. And it's little known, and it's fairly misunderstood. And frankly, the advice that we've been given by legal experts is extremely broad. So I wanted to talk about that. Can Californians carry at a protest? If you're a CCW holder, are you able to carry when you go to a political protest? And what exactly does that mean? First off, have you guys heard of this before, Dakota, Alicia? Have you guys heard of the limitations when it comes to political protests and carrying?
I've heard discussions. I will tell you, I've heard conflicting information.
Same.
And to be honest, I'm not sure where the truth lies. So
I
I'm
had
curious
never
to hear.
read the actual penal code, if there's one. I just have heard people say, oh, you can't do that. But, like, it's not on the regular, thing that you look at when you're like, oh, where can I carry my gun?
So I have bad news.
Okay.
This segment is not going to make it a whole lot clearer.
Oh, great. Love that for us.
It's a problem with gun laws in California. But at least you'll have more information to arm yourselves with. First off, the actual penal code is right here. It's Penal Code 17510, and it starts, any person who does any of the following acts while engaged in picketing or other informational activities in a public place relating to a concerted refusal to work is guilty of a misdemeanor. Now, before we go on any further, we're going to read all these. But what the heck are they even talking about?
Yeah, what does that mean?
So you have to keep in mind that this law was passed back in the 30s. And there were a lot of labor unions this was kind of the beginning of the union pushback, protests, that sort of thing. So what you were seeing was people organizing as a union and then pushing back against scabs. In other words, people that had been hired to replace people that were trying to unionize. Mm-hmm. And there were very violent interactions, very violent protests between people that were trying to unionize and people that were trying to work, or people that owned a business and didn't want to unionize. So that's the context of this law. So if you go back again, informational activities in a public place relating to a concerted refusal to work. So these are people that are on strike.
Yeah.
We don't want to work in this factory anymore. And the informational activities are, hey, we want to talk about a union, right? So a refusal to work is guilty of a misdemeanor, okay? Go ahead, somebody, if you could, Dakota, why don't you read number 1? So this is one of the first criteria of a few when it comes to what you can't do when you're engaged in informational activities in a public place relating to a concerted refusal to work. Go ahead.
If you carry concealed upon the person or within any vehicle which is under the person's control or direction, any pistol, revolver, or other firearm capable of being concealed upon the person.
Now, a lot of the times the way California law works is they say, hey, you can't do something. And then they come up with carve-outs. They come up with exceptions. You can't do something unless, so you can't do X unless A, unless B, unless C. There's no exception to this. There's no carve-out. There's nothing in Penal Code that says that, if you have a CCW, then you can do this. So there's no carve-out here. So when it says carry concealed upon the person or within the vehicle which is under the person's control, direction, et cetera, any pistol, they're referring to everybody, CCW holder or not. Okay, number 2.
Carries a loaded firearm upon the person or within any vehicle that is under the person's control or direction.
Again, no carve out. Number 3.
Carries a deadly weapon.
There you go. And then B, C, and D of 3. Go ahead.
The section shall not be construed to authorize or ratify any picketing or other informational activities not otherwise authorized by law.
And then C.
Certain other provisions relating to concealed firearms under carry law shall not be construed to authorize conduct described in paragraph 1 of subdivision A.
Okay. And then certain other provisions shall not be construed to authorize conduct prescribed in paragraph 2 or of subdivision A. Okay. So I've looked into this in the past and I've talked to attorneys. The case I made when I was talking to attorneys was, hey, look, if I'm not protesting, if I'm not refusing to work, and that's my protest is refusing to work. If I'm not trying to convince people to join a union, then none of this applies to me.
Yeah. I mean, it does say who does any of the following acts while engaged in picketing or other informational activities related to the strike. So it's like, if I'm not handing out flyers or I'm not engaged in picketing myself and I'm just like walking through this area because my car's on the other side, that isn't, it doesn't say you can't attend or walk near, right? It's saying you have to be engaged in the process. It's interesting.
So all of that is very reasonable. And the case being made that, hey, if I'm not refusing to work and I'm not trying to get somebody to join a union, I should be able to carry concealed if I have a CCW. And I should be able to go to a protest or a demonstration of some kind. The advice I've gotten from the attorney is you are making a very reasonable case, and it's also never been tested in court. And if you have $100,000 and don't mind risking your rights, then by all means do it, get caught, and let's make the case.
Clearly their intention here is for you not to be allowed to be present. That's the way, you can look at the way it's
With a
written.
firearm.
That way, correct. That's their intention. Did they succeed in making the lock of a firearm the requirement? Which is what you're looking at.
Right. I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice. None of us are. But the discussions I've had with people who are in the know are to be overly cautious. And basically, if you have to evaluate each event that you're attending and decide whether or not you're going to risk your rights, your freedom, your savings account, and carry concealed.
So if you take a look,
and basically, real quick, they're saying have a very, very, very broad definition of what they're talking about here when it comes to informational activities in a public place relating to a concerted refusal to work, or engaged in picketing, you have to have a very broad definition of what that is, what the activity you're going to is, or you have to be ready to financially risk going to court and being the test case. Go ahead, Alicia. I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. I was just you're kind of reading through this. Who is, as you stated, is engaged in picketing or other informational activities. Now, if they just said or other informational activities, that would have been a lot more broad, a lot more general, a lot more great, but they tied it in or other informational activities in a public place relating to a concerted refusal to work.
Right.
So they tied the grayness of informational activities to the refusal to work. So as you kind of mentioned, if you are not refusing to work, this does not apply.
Well, but you got to go back.
Right.
So there's two things. Any person who does any of the following acts while, number one, engaged in picketing,
Or,
number two, it's or, not and.
right.
So, or other informational activities in a public place relating to a concerted refusal to work. Now, let's go back to picketing. Let's say you want to attend a press conference. And is that a political activity? Can you carry? Well, what if you go to the press conference and by the way, I hate to what if the heck out of things.
Yeah.
But we've hosted press conferences where people showed up, they heard, hey, there's a press conference happening, and they've come out with signs and are picketing. So now, am I at a political event where there's picketing? Does it apply to me? I'm not picketing, but they're
It does
picketing.
say while engaged in picketing. So if you're not engaged.
So are you willing to put your savings account and your rights and be the test case?
Well, it also says relating to a concerted refusal to work.
In person, but that's the second one though.
That's tied to B. A is just simply engaged in picketing or other informational activities.
So
I don't think that's what they meant.
what do you think?
I think they meant engaged in picketing or
Or-
engaged in other informational
But
activities
both tied to.
related to a concerted refusal to work.
Commas are important.
Yes, I think they wrote that a little bit weird, but I think that's the intent of it.
Interesting.
And how does that get determined? What their intent was?
Well, yeah, there'd have to be a court case. I'm not going to be the court case,
No.
but somebody can.
So there's two things about this. Number one, this needs to go away. It's unconstitutional. That's number one. Number two, until that happens, you have to have a very, very cautious and broad definition of what they're trying to prevent, because we live in a state that is predatory towards gun owners and particularly predatory towards CCW holders. That's something everyone's trying to prevent. In other words, organizations and advocates, we're trying to prevent that and reverse it. But the reality that we live in right now is the recommendation is either be cautious or be rich. Those are your two options.
Fair.
Yeah. Back in 2018 or 2017, they tried to pass something, SB 1099, which was about demonstrations and protests, and it did not pass.
Oh, that's good.
It was about not being able to carry firearms or other things too, like baseball bats, and there was a bunch of stuff in the bill. And yeah, they said, nope, that's not constitutional.
There you go. So there you go. Again, Penal Code 17510. Check it out for yourselves. This is, as far as there needs to be a lawsuit, or we need to elect enough people to reverse this. But obviously, that's probably further down the road than a lawsuit is. But when it comes to priorities of what lawsuits need to get filed, this is probably lower middle of the pack. In the meantime, be cautious, be educated. And if you want to be the test case, you got to be rich and brave. So there you go. Can Californians carry at a protest?
You could be the one to find out.
You might be the answer to that question. So there you go.
I've got some classes you are not going to want to miss out on. We are bringing Chuck Haggard from Agile Training and Consulting out to San Diego in March. He's going to be here the evening of March 13th teaching a low light class. This is going to be perfect for those of you who have a home defense firearm and want to learn a little bit more about how to use light in your home, how to use a handheld flashlight, and whether or not a weapon mounted light is the right choice for you. On Saturday, March 14th, he's going to be teaching an all-day at the range concealed carry skills class. He'll be covering pepper spray, flashlights, tourniquet use, and then of course, lots of shooting and practice dealing with unknown aggressors or just random people walking up to you. There will be a lot of opportunities for you guys to practice your verbal judo and de-escalation skills as well. On Sunday, March 15th, he's going to be teaching an all-day retention and disarms class. There will also be shooting in that class. You'll be able to shoot from different positions of retention, and he will teach you a little bit about how to avoid being disarmed yourself or how to assist with disarming somebody else. So I hope to see you guys there.
Okay, Stump my nephew. Sam is my nephew, and for years now, we have been running this segment a particular way. If you write in and give us a trivia question that has to do with guns or gun function or gun history or anything related to guns, we will ask Sam. He doesn't get to hear the question beforehand. If we use your question, then you get a hat or a shirt. If you stump him, then you get a special prize. We're going to switch things up, though, because we got an interesting thing. We got a very interesting question from somebody who specifically wanted Sam's advice. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask Sam the question. We're going to get his advice, and then we'll discuss amongst ourselves.
I like it.
You like it?
I'm ready.
All right, good.
Yeah,
All right.
we're doing car talk.
We're doing car talk.
kind of.
Click and clack. Do you guys know car talk? You know car talk.
Yes.
How do you know car talk?
Well, we hung out. Who do we hang out with?
What do you mean?
Isn't that what I might be imagining. I thought that was something we discussed with Dave.
With Dave?
Yeah.
Oh, no, car
Was that
talk was
different? Okay.
Yeah, car talk's totally different.
Okay.
See, that's Sam
have
and
no clue.
Sam and I talked about this. Nobody's heard of Car Talk. Car Talk. It was on NPR. It was actually a very cool. No, Dakota. I'm not even going to ask Dakota. There's no way Dakota. Has
I
heard
was
of Car
like,
Talk.
is this similar to Kelly Blue Book? I was like Googling what is Car Talk.
Car Talk were these two guys, and they went by Click and Clack, and they would talk about cars. They'd write in with a question, and they'd say, "Hey, my car's making a weird noise. What do you think?" All right, let's roll.
Basically, they would try to diagnose your problem and tell you how to fix it over the phone.
How often
like
were they
that.
right?
Like always.
I think
they
most
were
of the time,
amazing.
They were mechanics.
They were amazing. It was really, really entertaining. All right, let's go. Here we go.
That
who wants-
actually sounds much better than what I thought Car Talk was.
Yeah. Who wants to read the question?
I'll read it.
Fire away.
All right, so Frank from Poway, his question is, and he states right up front, this is not a trivia question, but I want to know Sam's opinion. I'm looking to get my first and probably only 1911 in 45. Should I get a Kimber, Remington, Colt, or Springfield? And then he gives some more information, so don't decide just yet. He says, I'm looking for quality. I might carry it a little, though it won't be my primary. I do not want a safe queen. I might shoot a competition or two, and I might use it for home defense. I want it to be nice and respectable, but not a showpiece and not so nice that I can't use it the way a gun should be used.
There you go. What do you got, Sam?
Frank from Poway, thanks very much for writing in. And again, to all of you listeners, this is not a trivia question. He's asking for advice. So the format's a little different here. He wants a 1911, and as regular listeners will know, and regular readers of the blog will know, I used to work at a gun store. I sold guns. So when someone would come in and say, oh, hey, I want a thus and such, or like this, hey, I want a 1911, but my first question would always be, okay, what do you want to do with it? Mm-hmm. And he's already put in some work answering that question. So it seems like he wants kind of a general purpose 1911. It seems like Frank doesn't know exactly what he specifically wants it for, but he wants a 1911 so that he can have a 1911, which is great. I think they're fun guns. I enjoy shooting them. So let me ask a question of you, Dakota, and this is a loaded question. Frank named Kimber, Colt, Remington, and Springfield. Mm-hmm. Now I know you're a competition shooter. and 1911s are popular in some disciplines of competition. What brands do you see on the range?
Well, I'll say I almost never see a Remington.
There's a reason
There
for
are, yeah. I would say there's a fair amount of Kimbers. There's a fair amount of Colts. Not so many Springfields. I don't really see a ton of Springfields out in competition. But yeah, Kimbers and Colts are pretty popular. I honestly can't tell you the last time I've even seen a Remington 1911 on the range.
Well, Remington no longer makes 1911s. They had the 1911 R1, they called it for a while. But the current Remington, as I have detailed in a past blog post, actually, is kind of almost a new company wearing the skinned face of the old Remington as a mask. It's not real. They do say they'll support old Remington products, but they don't make 1911s anymore. And even when they did, that wasn't really one of their main products. They focused more on 870s and 700s. So that's one of the four discarded. Second, Colt. Colt has been making 1911s longer than anyone else. They were the OG, but in my professional opinion, Colt pistols are overpriced for what you get. Colt 1911s and Colt AR-15s actually both are way overpriced for what you get. Their revolvers are nice. I haven't shot a Colt revolver, but anecdotally they seem nice. But when you buy a 1911 or an AR from Colt, you're not really getting a Colt. You're getting this mystery meat assemblage of parts that they farm out production to other job shops to make the parts. So it's not even all Colt. And in large part, you're also paying for the name. You're paying for the fact that it says Colt on the side. And Series 80s are well-designed pistols for 1911s, and they're fine, but they're not worth what Colt is charging for them, in my opinion. So that leaves Kimber and what was the other one? Springfield?
Springfield. Mm-hmm.
Kimber is notable in the 1911 space in that back in the 90s when they started making them, they were the first company, at least in the US, if not the whole world, to make a fully CNC machined 1911. That allowed them to lower costs while tightening clearances because their tolerances could be so much smaller. So you could get from Kimber back in the day, basically hand-fitted quality mass-produced on machines. But Kimber's quality control after about the 2000s took a nosedive. It's not where it was before, and frankly, it isn't where it should be, again, in my professional opinion.
Agreed.
I could name several anecdotes about Kimber having inconsistent quality control, I'll say, but suffice it to say, if I get a stainless 2 straight out of the box from the distributor and it has rust on it, then it isn't stainless, is it?
Jeez.
So
that's happened?
That did happen.
That's not good.
Yeah. I've seen it.
No, and they have some other issues. I like the pistols on paper, but the thing about bad quality control is you might get 9 guns that are perfectly fine and have a great time with them and they run great, and then the 10th one is bad. But that's a 10% failure rate, which is totally unacceptable. So the thing about quality control is not all the guns are going to be lemons, but you have enough of a risk of getting a lemon and sometimes enough difficulty dealing with customer service that I don't think it's really worth it for the money. So if you can find a used Kimber that you know who had it, your buddy had it and you said, oh, I put 4,000 rounds through this and it worked great, I just don't want it anymore, then yeah, that should be fine. And they have a great variety of different pistols, but I would not necessarily trust them for new guns. So that leaves Springfield out of the 4. Springfield has been trying to expand their lineup in recent years. They have a pretty good variety of 1911s out there. And their pistols seem to be fine. I'm not aware of any major deficiencies with their 1911s, but they do tend to be, in my opinion, a little bit expensive for what you get. So I will instead disagree with the premise of the question, as I'm so fond of doing, and I will throw out those 4 brands, and I'll recommend instead get Rock Island or Armscore. It's the same company. Their pistols aren't necessarily as nice as, if you spend $3,500 on a Springfield TRP operator, that's a really well put together gun, and it's going to smoke your $500 Rock Island. But RIA makes their pistols in a wide variety of different price brackets. They have their cheap $500 guns, and they also have a lot of nicer ones that are popular on the competition circuit. And it's, to that point, it's really kind of a fun coincidence that Frank wrote in this question, because just the other day I was talking to a gunsmith who works on 1911s in my local area. And I asked him, okay, what brands do you like? And he said, I asked him about a couple, and he said, oh, that one's good, that one's fine, those are all right. But he said he really likes Rock Island just in terms of pure price for performance, because he can take that Rock Island, you get whatever pistol they offer, and they have about 1 billion different configurations. You get whatever frame style, slide style, commander size, full size, rail dust cover, no rail, ring hammer, whatever. You get whatever you want. You bring it to a good gunsmith, and he can really tighten it up and polish down all the surfaces and make it into a really, really nice pistol. So, final answer, if you want just value for money, 1911, best bang for your buck, I'd say Rock Island. Get probably their TAC series. You can get those with all the modern features, actual real sights, a rail for a light, G10 grips. They have the features you need for a not unreasonable price, and they work.
There you go. The features you need for a not unreasonable price.
That is
What do you
interesting.
What do you got, Alicia? What do you think?
I'm surprised. I will tell you,
Yeah.
I do have a Rock Island. I got it from a friend passed away, and when he passed, I inherited it. And it's actually a pretty decent gun. I paid a gross fee. I paid a PBT. That's all I had to pay for it. And I'm actually, is it as nice as the others? When you pick it up, you can kind of feel the difference in quality. But does it run well? Has it been reliable? Yeah, functions well. And honestly, it wasn't something that I would, just because the industry tends to look down upon it so much. It's something that, I kind of just don't give much thought to.
Same.
So, but, Sam has some good points. And I will tell you, it may not have all the polished finesse and the perfect quality feel. But if you're looking for function and quality, for what you pay,
Yeah.
well, it's not bad. But I have a quick question for you, Sam.
Sure.
Dan Wesson or Ed Brown?
Oh, jeez.
Oh gosh, their cheapest guns are worth more than my car. I can't even talk about those.
I was gonna say.
But
talk about.
Again, I will
think
say,
Dan
if you want a really nice 1911, just take whatever 1911 you already have or that you can afford and get it worked on by a good smith, because he can do a lot of tuning and polishing to get it fit just for you, the exact trigger pull weight you want, the exact trigger pull length you want. He can do an action job and make the slide feel like rubbing 2 bars of soap together.
Jeez.
And
Wet or dry?
Frank wrote in from Poway, right?
Yeah.
Frank.
So I'm sure you could drive down to like Santee or El Cajon or whatever and find a gunsmith there.
Yeah,
sure.
We know a few.
Yeah. Well, or I think they have one in Poway. I don't know if but Poway Weapons Gear probably has. But yes,
probably
there's
do.
plenty.
Is Poway too North County for there to be good gunsmiths?
No.
Well, Poway is
Or-
north or east, depending on if you're buying or selling.
Depending
a
on
house.
if you're buying or selling, right?
Okay, so Dakota, what do you got? What do you think?
Yeah. No, it was interesting. So when I shoot like steel competitions, a lot of times it's like older guys who have their old Colt or their old Kimber from like way back in the day, and that's what they're shooting in competition. If I'm thinking about like USPSA, people who are really trying to do well in like that 1911 category, they're often shooting way more expensive guns like the Dan Wessons or like the Prodigy. The Springfield Prodigy is a fairly popular option. Wilson Combat has a pretty expensive, pretty nice competition option. But I think the 1911s are kind of on their way out as the 2011s are really coming in, because like Staccato has been blowing up. I see so many more Staccatos at competitions now. And from everything I've heard, I don't think they're like really that great of guns, but people love them for whatever reason.
The Staccato or the
Staccato.
2011 or
The Staccato,
Staccatos,
yeah,
2011s.
the Staccatos
Yeah.
2011s.
They feel
I've
so
heard
nice,
like
though.
sometimes they're, you know, not good at all, and sometimes they're decent, and sometimes it's a great gun, right? And like the quality control maybe isn't what it should be. So I don't know. I've heard a lot of differing opinions, but I've seen them a lot.
The biggest significant difference, correct me if I'm wrong, the biggest significant difference between a 2011 and 1911 is that a 2011 is a double stack magazine.
The frame is not one unit as well, so the assembly is a little bit different, but correct.
Yeah, but it's double stack for 2011, and there's some other 2011s out there that are becoming popular, but I've seen a lot of Staccatos on the competition circuit lately.
So that's what you're telling Frank? Get a 2011?
No. I was just following up on the question I was asked, which is what are you seeing popular
Oh, I see. Okay.
in competition? And I'm saying actually the 1911s aren't as popular as they were even just like 2 years ago.
Nice. Well, I have a specific recommendation. It kind of Sam actually touched on a lot of it. I think you're probably absolutely right. Go out and get a Rock Island. I think you're probably a really good suggestion. But of the 4 he actually asked about, I would suggest because he's looking for function. He's looking for a gun he can be proud of, but it's still going to work, and it's kind of he can do everything with it from home defense to maybe just go do an informal match. I think you should look at a Springfield TRP. Specifically a TRP.
Yep.
Because what he's describing is a budget issue. He's trying to do everything he can for as little money as he can afford. I can totally relate. I get it. And a TRP is probably right at the edge of somebody's budget who is in this situation. It's probably right at the high end of what they can afford or what they think they'll put into a 1911. But on top of that, a Springfield TRP was actually it was born of a design that Springfield made for LAPD SWAT. So it is intended to be a working gun. It is not intended to be a safe queen. So it's got a lot of function to it. If he wants to use it for home defense, it's got most of them come with a rail. You can get one with a rail, so you can put a light on it. If you want to go into competition, it's one of the few that comes from the factory with a mag well. It's reputable. You can pretty much do a little bit of everything with it, but it's not so fancy that you'd be afraid to take it hiking. You'd be afraid to take it camping, something like that. You certainly wouldn't be afraid to shoot a competition with it or drop it on the ground or take a class with it or something like that. So specifically, Frank, I think one of your good, solid options in your budget with everything you want to do with it, and you still want to be able to impress your friends, I think is Springfield TRP. That's my thought. That's my specific recommendation for you.
Merging your 2 suggestions together, you can get 3 Rock Islands for the cost of 1 TRP.
Well, you only have 2 hands, though.
You got a backup.
Good point.
So yeah, you could. Springfield does offer good variety if you don't want to. I agree. Of the 4 suggestions, and if you don't want to have to go through the effort of getting it worked on by a gunsmith, Springfield 1911 operators, those are great. They range around $1,200 starting, which is a little rich for my blood, but you can get them with all the features, as Michael said. You get the rail, you can get them optics ready, you can get them in either full size or commander size, which is about a 4 or 4.25 inch barrel instead of the standard 5 inch. So that would be better for carry.
There you go. And don't be fooled by the MSRP. Never pay MSRP for a gun. It's this weird game that the gun industry plays where they overprice the MSRP so that the gun shop doesn't have to charge full price, and everybody feels good that they got a discount. So never pay MSRP. All right, well there you go, Frank. Awesome question. I think it was very cool. It wasn't trivia, it was advice, and I think we'll probably do that a little more often. I think it was a great job. Good job, Sam. Awesome.
Well, thanks for having me, and Frank, thanks for sending it in.
Well, back fumes drifting through the door. But the times have changed and it's almost fun. Just clean your gun with Seal One. No harsh chemicals, no compromise. Just a safer solution for American lives. From the vets who know what it means to serve comes a cleaner that gives your gun what it deserves. You wipe it on, wipe it off, and the carbon's gone. Seal One and done, just like that. Move on, improve reliability, smooth.
All right. So I just had a thought, Sam. It's been
Yeah.
a while since we've done this, and we used to do this quite a bit, to where we would have some fun, and we would ask you to guess someone's preferred carry.
Oh gosh, this.
So let's do it. So we spent some time here in air, right? You and Dakota, right? I don't believe Dakota's ever talked about her carry gun with you on air.
Well,
So
have you heard him do this before, Dakota?
It's pretty funny. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So what I'd love to do is, Sam, let you do your thing. Let's see if you can guess Dakota's carry gun.
Well, I have an idea for what I think it is, but the difficulty with this is that I don't know what's on the roster and what isn't.
That does make it tricky.
What car do you drive?
I was not ready for that question.
Oh, that's how I do it. That's where the
Oh, okay,
magic comes
okay.
from.
I didn't know. I drive a Buick Encore. I think it's a 2019. It might be a 2021. It's 1 year off of 2020. I can't remember which direction.
A Buick.
It's like an SUV.
Yeah. Okay, well that changes what I had in mind.
I will say I had the gun before I had this car.
How long have you had the gun?
I have had the gun since 2021.
What'd you drive before? Is that a valid question, Sam?
Yeah, that is a valid question.
I drove a Mazda 3.
Oh, that doesn't help at all. Is it the same brand as what you shoot in competition?
No.
Oh gosh, I wanted to say a Shield Plus, and then I wanted to say Springfield Hellcat, but I don't know if the Hellcat was out in 2021. I think that's when it came out. Yeah, I'm going to say a Hellcat.
It's a good guess. I do have a Hellcat Pro. I do own
Okay.
one, but no, that is not my carry gun.
You want one more guess?
I'll take it close. What is it?
Oh,
It's a SIG P365 XL.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. And
It's
what
not
do you
on the
shoot in
roster.
Competition in M&P?
What'd you say?
What do you shoot in competition in M&P?
Yeah, I shoot the M&P Performance Center 2.0, and the Glock 17 is like my backup competition gun, but I'm leaning more towards the Glock 17 again these days.
I don't think a
Any
SIG lines
particular
up with a
reason?
Buick and a Mazda. I got to tell you, I've watched you work in the past, Sam, and I don't think the SIG definitely doesn't line up with her car choice. There's some.
No,
kind
yeah,
of,
it's a little bit out of left field, but the tricky thing with the
What did the Buick
365
say to you?
platform is that it's so ubiquitous that you get like a cross section of the whole population who carries them.
So what did the
So
what-
I whiffed that one, but I don't feel too bad about myself because she does own a Hellcat Pro.
I
There you
do.
go.
And I own a Shield. Not the Shield Plus, because it's not on the roster, but I do own a
Shield
Shield.
Plus is roster now?
Oh, it is
Yep,
now?
yeah.
Okay.
The Easy's
Well,
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It wasn't when I bought my gun.
So Sam, what did the Buick say to you? Like where would you have gone with that?
I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. It's all a heuristic. Yeah, I just go off of vibes. I don't know.
Just go.
I love it.
That's funny.
a Buick is kind of an interesting choice. It's Buick Encore. It is a combination of classic car because Buick's a very American classic car, but an Encore is a very practical choice. So it's kind of an interesting mix of kind of this classic American domestic auto and a very practical choice.
Yeah, I will say
An Encore looks like.
my car choice probably isn't that helpful as an indicator of who I am as a person, because every time I've bought a car, it's because it was an emergency and my other car no longer worked. And so first I had a Mazda Protege. That's the first car I got in high school. I had that car the day that it stopped running. It had over 200,000 miles on it. It just would not go anymore. It had been like sputtering along for a while, but now it was just like, will not go.
Did you try putting gas in it?
Yeah, I did actually. That is what started it though. I thought the car was dead. Turned out it was just out of gas, but then it really died. The producer's laughing too because I've run out of gas.
Is that
on
a
my
factor?
way to this show.
When you buy a car, do you think to yourself, I need a big gas tank?
No, I don't think
'Cause it
that.
should
no
be
matter
a factor.
how big the gas
Do we
tank
still have the
is,
board?
it's possible for me
Oh,
to
Rich,
run
grab the
out.
board. Yeah, grab the board.
This happened, when was that? Like a couple months ago?
Yeah.
And then they made a sign for me that says
There you
zero,
go.
Days
zero
since Dakota
days,
ran.
Days
Yes.
since.
7. But that, yeah, it's been longer than that now.
I mean, I don't think anybody other than Dakota has run out of gas since like 1979. I think it
it
was
has
the last
happened
time.
to me quite a few times in my life. Like at least
I've heard of
4.
it happening because of a bad fuel sender unit, but
No. Like it says E for a long time, and I'm like, I think I've got a few more miles in it, and turns out I don't.
If you describe Dakota as the fuel sender unit, then you're right on.
Faulty.
But if you're actually
Well,
talking
in a more
about
abstract
a
sense.
part of a car, then no.
Okay, but what I was going to say is the car wouldn't work. I looked on Craigslist for a car that was affordable in my price range because I wanted to pay cash for a car. I didn't want a payment. And I found a Mazda 3, and it just happened to be the car that was on Craigslist that day that was ready for pickup that was in my price range. I did not care what brand it was or anything. When my Mazda 3 got totaled, again, emergency, I had like 2 days to buy a car before I had to go to work. And so I went to a used car lot and I test drove a couple cars, and the Buick Encore was the one that I liked the best out of the 3 I tried.
Let's flip this around, Sam. Let's what should Dakota's next car be? Like if you really wanted to get an automobile that said something about Dakota, what should that automobile be?
well, I don't know. I kind of get the Mazda thing because those are supposed to be kind of sporty, right? So that's something that strikes me as more fitting for a younger woman, I guess. I hate to stereotype like that, but the Mazda makes sense. I get the Mazda. But the way the car and gun thing works is that they're both things you have some choice in buying. That part of it comes down to personal taste, not just on does it do the thing you need it to do. Like if there was only one gun that held 15+1 rounds of 9mm, or sorry, if there was only one gun that held 10+1 rounds of 9mm with a 4-inch barrel, then they would only sell one gun, right? So they're both indicators of the person's personality. But again, the 365 is so popular. But yeah, I don't know. I could see you in another Mazda, I guess, but sometimes it doesn't exactly line up perfectly because, as you said, Dakota, you buy cars out of desperation, not out of choice. And I mean, my
That
car
is
doesn't
true.
seem to fit my gun choice at all. I drive a 2004 Volvo S80, which you would more expect to see at a Mom's Demand action rally than in a gun range parking lot. I own that. About me, about it. I like the car. What can I say?
I think it's funny that you how much thought you put into guns, and then you just buy whatever car it happens to be for sale that day when you desperately need one. Okay, here's my suggestion, Sam. Let me know what you think. I think her next automobile should be a Honda Ridgeline.
I don't even know what that looks
It's
like.
Honda's pickup truck, and it's actually built on Honda's
Is that the unibody one?
the CRV chassis, but it's a pickup. CRV.
I absolutely will not ever be owning that vehicle.
What? Why not? That's perfect. It's practical. You have 4 doors.
It's practical. I don't need to
I
make
don't like
parking
pickup trucks.
harder than it already is.
It's like an ugly.
Yeah,
Ugly.
What do you?
it is ugly.
There goes our Honda sponsorship. Never. Jeez.
What was?
Well,
I'm drawn.
never ask me what car I think someone should buy because my answer will always be either Toyota Corolla or used Volvo. I'm very uninspired in that way.
All right. Well, there you go, guys.
It looks like El Camino had a baby with a truck.
I can totally, honestly, you know what? I could totally see her in like an El Camino or an old Brat. Remember the Brats back in? Isn't that totally like
these because I don't even know what these look
like a Dakota car? I could totally see her in a El Camino or a Brat.
Interesting.
I think those things would sell like hotcakes in the United States. In Australia, they call that style a ute.
Yeah.
But Americans love having truck beds for some reason, even though they never use them. So they sold those here.
You were what?
I was so angry when my husband was like, his next vehicle was going to be a truck. I was like, what are we possibly going to use a truck for? We don't need a truck. It's a waste of space. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of parking. I can't drive your car because I don't want to drive a truck. But he won. He got his truck. And he has a Ford F-150. Yeah.
Nice.
It's fine. It's useful once a year. I'm going to use it on Sunday, you know.
See?
It's fine.
Well,
We
you need it
definitely
to
don't
show
need
off to all the other drivers that you own a truck.
That's the other part of it I don't like.
It's got a nice big gas tank. See, that's what if you had a pickup
I have run out
in
of gas in the truck.
What? Unbelievable. If you get a pickup, you should get a second tank, like a big old 40-gallon tank, and put it in the bed.
They call that a day tank.
You know.
Yeah. In my defense, the truck was parked on an angle, and I guess that makes it look like there's more gas in it than there is.
That's not a defense. That is not a defense. That is no defense.
Okay.
All right. Well, there you go. So Sig 365, Sam kind of missed the mark on this one, but oh well. It's he is the world's foremost expert on guessing someone's carry gun based on the car they drive.
I like it.
Well, you know what? I think where I was going with the Buick Springfield connection is that they both have these very storied names, but like they kind of aren't that anymore, if that makes any sense. Like the current company Springfield
I get
is
it.
not related in any way to the original Springfield Armory. It's just they bought the name in the 70s.
There goes our
And
Springfield
that's not to say their
sponsorship
guns are bad.
and our Buick sponsorship. Let's see how many other brand
How much
names we
deeper of a
can
hole
piss
can I
off.
dig for
in this.
myself? Am I about to insult Buick? You know what? No. Let's call that a segment. I'm not going to get myself in any more trouble today.
All right, there you go.
All right. Well,
Nice job.
thanks. I appreciate the attempt. This kind of felt like a roast Dakota segment, but I'm fine with that. That's funny.
Roasted with gas.